Hello, everybody. Can you hear me down there? Obviously not. Okay. That's better. I don't know how I wound up here. A proud Sligo and Bunanatin man on a stage in the manor. I think it's a phenomenon called the short straw. But if you're looking for words of wisdom or anything inspirational to hang on to, in what I say, you haven't a hope. Because you're about to hear a whole load of malarkey. Now, I wasn't given any sequence of events or anything else. I know we have Adrian and Eve here is going to play us a few tunes. We'll give them a rest yet. But I see a lovely cake here in front of me. And I know Father Paul is mad to get his hands on it. He still has a cup of tea in his hands. So maybe we'd get Father Paul and Bishop Hayes to come up and cut the cake first. Okay. If anyone has their cameras or anything else while this is going on, wants to get a photograph, we'll ask before the cake is destroyed if you want to take a photograph.
Yeah, I got it already.
Yeah. I think most people were probably ahead of me altogether on that and had photographs taken of it. Is the photographer here? Okay, so we'll get Father Paul and Bishop Hayes to cut the cake.
Very good. Nice.
Now you get out of the photograph. I think we'll get the formalities out of the way, the line of any speeches or anything else that has to be given. We have talented musicians, lots of them in the manor. So we get the formalities out of the way first now. I was given several pointers and everything else. I was supposed to come up here and praise Father Paul to the hilt and say talk about the great fella he is and everything else. But I'm fierce reluctant to do that. You see, the bishop is here. And if he hears about some great fella here in the manor and Dromahare that's doing a great job, he might just decide to move him away from us. And I think that would be a sin. No, when I was a young fella 15 or 16 years ago, or was that 50 or 60 years ago, I'm not sure. But we were running a youth club, and a gang of us were brought for a 3-day session to show us how to run a youth club and what it was about. And I suppose I probably learned one of the greatest lessons in my life back that time. We were all divided into groups sitting around tables. I think it was 6 or 8 at a table. There was probably 40 or 50 of us from different youth clubs there. And the leader said to us, he says, we'll divide you into several groups and we'll have a discussion. Each group will have their own discussion. So he got us all around different tables and he got up and walked out of the room. So we waited. We assumed he had a phone call to make. There was no mobiles in those days, or that he had a call in nature or whatever. But we sat there patiently, must have been for about 15 minutes, and he walked back into the room. And he went to each table and he says, well, what did you discuss? We were all sitting with our youthful innocence, with our mouths open. You didn't tell us what to discuss. He says, that's why you're here. You need leadership. If someone at the table had said, we'll discuss this, then they would become the leader. Now, we've been blessed in this parish for as long as I've been around it anyway, with priests that always had drive and passion about what they were doing. And we were surely blessed when Father Paul came, because a leaky roof has been fixed. There's statues. They're not moving statues. They stay in the place. There's crosses that no one ever noticed that have been there over 200 years, and they're noticeable again. So the drive, and he didn't tell us how to do it or anything else. He just went ahead and says, we need to hold a meeting. There's a bicentenary coming up. It's a very special occasion for any parish. And 200 years is a long time. So it was his drive initiative that got everything up and running. And that's why the church looks the way it does today, because of his initiative and his drive and his passion for what he's at. Now, I called for silence earlier on, and I think it's appropriate, before I hand over to Paul, that just for a few moments, we think of those people that put that church there initially 200 years ago. And I'm sure everyone has their own relatives, their own stories from way back when. So just for a few moments, we'll have total silence in memory of those, and those that are sick and can't be with us. Okay, we'll say, the Lord look down and preserve and take into his care those that are gone before us, and heal those that are sick. And rather than having to listen to any more malarkey, we'll hand you over to Father Paul.
What am I supposed to say? So, Eddie, thank you very much, and Bishop Martin. And I was in the church talking about Father Cook, and he loved the place so much that he came back 30 years later and spent 3 years. And then he was replaced by Father McTiernan that loved the place so much that he spent 17 years here. So I was saying that so that it would be noted by someone in authority that I'm only 6 years here, I have 11 more to do. I think the work we done in the church, and it was we, it wasn't certainly not an I, but there was feelers went out, and the question was asked, should we celebrate? Is it worth celebrating it? And the answer was yes. And from last October, when we started meeting, that commitment, that energy was there. And as we got closer to our final date, that energy expanded. People come in as volunteers and helpers, and they look to see the bell being moved, the work being done at the Tarmacadam where the bell was, that bit being brought back to car parking space. The work that was done on the walls, the painting, everybody was involved. And if you want to know what community is, look around you here, and all the food here in this hall, and the beautiful presentation. Everybody made the effort, families in this area, to celebrate this bicentenary. Bishop Martin mentioned in the sermon about synodality, and there's a new model of church. There's a new model of church developing and evolving, and that involves us all. And 21 people training to be leaders, and those people will be helping the priests, will be helping the pastoral councils, will be helping the communities. to bring them together in prayer. It's not going to be just a priest, it will be more than that. So what is the community we have here is excellent. The people get involved, they help, and that is what community and teamwork is about. As I often say to the kids in school, it's very easy to say no. If everybody said no, nothing would happen. So thank you for saying yes back last October when we started having our meetings, and to everyone else who said yes to allow this process to continue and to have that celebration here today. So thank you to everyone, and it's in memory of all those who've gone before us, as Eddie said, and it's a tribute to them, because we have a fine church today in memory of them, and all of it has been recorded as well for 50 years from now, in 100 years, they will see and know what we have said. A bit like the video here on my right, 35 years ago. So thank you very much for everything, for your support, and thanks Teddy for being the MC and everyone that helped out to make today's function very, very special and memorable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Paul. As I said, days like this don't just happen. They're caused. And we owe a deep debt of gratitude to everyone that got involved. It's not just about the church, it's about the hall here itself. I've seen a huge gang of people outside with paintbrushes and rollers and everything else decorating here. There was no bother getting anyone. You had all the catering staff over here washing up, cleaning, having everything nice and neat and tidy. And it just shows what happens when a community gets together, what can be achieved. And as I say, all it takes is leadership. One man to make the suggestion, or woman, or one person to make that suggestion. And it all falls into place once people are willing to say, yes, I will help. And unfortunately, not everyone. It'd be a case of too many cooks spoil the broth if we had too many around at times. But it's everyone is willing to put their shoulder to the wheel when something like this happens, and that's much appreciated. And I think at a time like this, just when they were giving a sermon earlier on in the church, it's very much a case of the moment of the harvest being rich and the labourers being few. And unfortunately, we have our numbers of priests are dropping, and definitely the age has gone up. But we were blessed to get Father Paul, and it's great to see some of the older priests that were here before. They might be retired, but like myself, I don't think they know what retirement is. So a big round of applause to each and every one. Like Father Paul, I have no intention of thanking anyone individually, but two people I think that I do need to mention. And one is very camera shy, I know that. Two of them are actually, because I work with them regular. But that's Peter O'Dowd and Jerry Ginty. Without them, there wouldn't be any clean crosses, there wouldn't be any statue, anything like that. They declined to come here today because they don't like publicity. But a round of applause for them. Now, I think that's enough for me at this stage. And we'll ask Niamh and Adrian to come and give us a few tunes. I forgot, I didn't ask Bishop Hayes if he wanted to say a few words. Maybe he does beforehand. He's well able to talk.
Just to pay tribute again to all the work went into preparing for today, and pay tribute, as the previous speaker said, about all who contributed previously and all the people who contributed over the past 200 years. And you've hit as well upon a significant feature of what's happening for us now is we have less priests and there's more of a call upon lay people. So that invitation is there. So thanks very much. Good to be with you. Okay.
We're falling down. So, without further ado, I know they probably have loads of practice over the weekend. I can only imagine what that wedding was like. But we'll call on Adrian and Neve to give us a few tunes. Big round of applause.
I think it's all right. Thanks, Kevin. Are you going to play?
How about a big round of applause for Niamh and Adrian? I shouldn't even have to ask. And at this stage, I think Kevin's going to sing us a few songs with his guitar. Again, a big round of applause for Adrian and Niamh.
Last night I had a pleasant dream. I woke up with a smile. I dreamt that I was back again in dear old Erin's Isle. I passed Sheemore, that fairy hill where the flowers wildly grow, and I saw the grave of Finn McCool where the Shannon waters flow. I stood enchanted by the sea of grandeur and delight. I headed off for Carrick Town before the dark of night. I passed Sheemore, that fairy hills where the flowers wildly grow, and I saw the grave of Finn McCool where the Shannon waters flow. Sure, the next I saw was Feenagh Town with their ancient abbey wall, with their preaching of her holy monks re-echoed through the hall. I stood with reverence on the spot, reluctant far to go. From the town of saints and sages swear the Shannon waters flow. Any singers down there? I want to hear you join in. I travel far from these great lands, from the east unto the west. But of all the islands I have seen, I love my own the best. And if ever I return again, there's one place I will go. That will be to love Leitrim, where the Shannon waters flow. That will be to love Leitrim, where the Shannon waters flow. On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound for nowhere, I met up with the gambler. We're both too tired to speak, so we took turns of staring out the window after darkness. The boredom overtook us. He began to speak. He said, "Son, I've made a life out of reading people's faces, knowing what the cards were by the way they held their eyes. So if you don't mind me saying, I can see you're out of aces. For a taste of your whiskey, I'll give you some advice." Well, I handed him my bottle, and he drank down my last swallow. Then he bummed a cigarette and asked me for a light. Well, the night got desperately quiet, and his face lost all expression. He said, "If you're going to play the game, boy, you got to learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold on, know when to fold up, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done." Well, every gambler knows that the secret to surviving, knowing what to throw away, knowing what to keep. 'Cause every hand's a winner, and every hand's a loser, and the best that you can hope for is to die in your sleep. So Oh, when he'd finished speaking, he turned back towards the window, crushed out a cigarette, and asked me for a light. Well, the night got desperate quiet, and his face lost all expression. He said, if you're going to play the game, boy, you gotta learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold up, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. Shall I stay? Should it be a sin? For I can't help falling in love with you. Oh, like the river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you, for I can't help falling in love with you. Now we'll hand you back to Adrian and Eve.
I go down on your shoulder. No, I think it's time we let our videographer away. And I'd just like to thank everyone that came here today, everyone that made this day possible. And a big special thanks to the Fowley family here, Niamh and Adrian. And of course, we can't forget the McDermotts behind us, but sure they are out making music this year. But again, thanks to each and everyone that made this day possible, that put their shoulder to the wheel and converted the church completely from where it was to what it is now. And I wonder will we be around in 200 years' time?
We'll be up there.
Whoever will, there'll be a lot of tall stories to be told. Hopefully, the way the world is going, it'll still be in it anyway. And I don't think a lot of us will even see the time capsule open, never mind 200 years down the road. So, a very good evening to everyone, and we'll give you another few tunes before the go. And we'll allow John hit the high road.
Yeah.
What do you have that?